Guess what, everybody? We're live.
I'm so excited.
And we're live in the nest with New York Times bestselling author Suzanne Young. You might know Suzanne from Girls with Sharp Sticks or the program, which I'm sorry, we're gonna call the program series definitely like a classic YA series at this point.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that, by the way. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
I am so thrilled to be here. I'm so excited to be back with you and get to chat with you, and I can't wait to see what we get into.
We're definitely going to be talking about your new book. But first off, I before we went live, we were talking about the very first time you came to chat with Words and Whimsy, and it was one of our very first chats that we royally mucked it up. We had so many technical issues, and you were such a gem because you ended up popping on your personal Facebook to make sure that we could like stream to our members. And I will never forget that forever. It taught us so many lessons, but it also showed that you're like just a gem.
We had such a good time, though. I think I was like calling people. I was FaceTiming. We were trying every kind of technology possible to find a workaround, but we were also laughing and having a good time. But it was definitely a lesson in sometimes technology will kind of determine how things go and how
It
you
certainly taught me that
respond.
we can reschedule.
Yeah, we could have, but we were having too much fun, I think.
I think the half the fun was trying to get on in any
Yeah.
way. It was just the worst night for technology. But we are actually here to talk about your latest novel, In Nightfall. Everybody, look at this cover. Okay,
I'm in
is
love
this
with it. It's
cover not
gorgeous.
the coolest cover
Oh,
you've ever
I'll
seen?
hold mine up too.
It's awesome.
I love it. Thank you.
It's cover candy. You must know that.
Oh my gosh, when we were first pitching cover ideas, I had a couple different ones. I was like, "Oh, I want like a girl in a bloody dress. I want this." And then I'm like, "Well, what if you have the girls of Nightfall? Like, here's these like luring sirens almost of Nightfall, like beckoning you in." And my editor was great because she's like, "Oh, I want it to be 80s campy horror kind of vibes." And she found our cover designer, Colin Verde, who does some amazing YA covers. And I saw the first sketch of this, and I was like, "That's exactly what I wanted, but didn't know how to put into words." So thank you. But I really love kind of that. Yeah, it's just kind of got like an old time, like an 80s, 90s vibe to it. And I love it.
I just kept looking at it while I was reading it. I'd go back and look at the cover and I'm like, they're just so
Yeah.
pretty.
Right. And, I think one of the descriptors was when I told him, I was like, well, so the girls, they're described as like walking Instagram filters. Like they're like this epitome of like beauty that shouldn't exist in the regular world. And of course, there's a reason for that. But that was something to try to get in an illustration, which isn't that easy. And he nailed it.
He did. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, though, although your cover was candy, you had a rough week last week that ended in an incredible week. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, it was such a rough week. And so I'll say, from the start, this was my first. So I've had all of my launch events here locally, and this was the first one since COVID. So I haven't had a solo event, obviously, since the pandemic in person. And, we posted online, and I go there and I brought all my gifts. And I even had my son come with me. He's an actor. And I was like, "Hey, come on stage with me, do the Q&A." And he was really excited. And we get there and we're like, "Oh, it's 5:50. There's no one here. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. There's no one here." And I'm like, this literally can't be happening. And then I want to say like maybe 6:15, another local author who I didn't know, she came in and she was like, "I didn't know if you were having an event. I'm so glad you're here." And I'm like, "Okay, this is really embarrassing. No one's here." And so the bookstore was amazing. Like they were like, "It's okay. Like this happens. Like it's okay. Um, we could do the event, or you could just sign book, like whatever it is you want to do." And my son was trying to cheer me on. He's like, "It's okay, Mom. Like we have the questions. We'll go through the questions. We can record it and you can put it online." And I was like, "Well, I just need to run the bathroom for a second." And I ran in there and I cried, and I came back out and I was like, "Okay, pull it together. put on a show. Like, this is your job. This is what you do. And, you know, I ended up having, you know, a local professor who I've known for years came by. I had a former student come by at the end to get a book signed, um, and the booksellers are great. And we took pictures. And so anyways, at the end of the night, so my husband's like, I'll drive you. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drive alone because I need to cry this out. Like, I just need to, I don't know. It's just kind of, it was a hard, I'm actually going to choke up now, but it was a hard moment. Like, I know that I'm lucky and grateful to be published. Like, please don't think I don't know that. I really do. But it was really hard, especially because I think I brought my son there, and I was just like, yeah. So I told him to go ahead, and I did cry my whole way home. And I posted a picture of the chairs. Those chairs, they're gonna haunt me probably for the rest of my life. And I said, crying my entire way home. I didn't even say it was a book signing. I didn't even mention the book. I posted it in like a really low, kind of vulnerable moment, thinking like usual, I'd get maybe 3 likes and a few authors that are like, yeah, I get it. So the next morning I woke up and I actually went to delete it because I was stressed. I was embarrassed. I was, you know, and I had like a bunch of comments from other authors who were like, I've been there before. This has totally happened to me. And then actually showing me other posts by some other amazing authors who had said they'd been through this. And all of a sudden I was like, this happens all the time. Like, I honestly didn't know that. Like, I thought last night that I was a complete failure and that it was over and like everything. And they just kept pouring in to the point that I didn't even know what to do, because I was like, I like, it was authors, it was musicians, and a large amount of stand-up comedians who apparently said they're very used to this. But then you had teachers who said they had to give presentations and this happened. And then Jodi Picoult like said, you know, everyone support Suzanne. I've been there. And she retweeted it, and Beverly Jenkins. And it was so overwhelming that I told my agent, I'm like, I think I have to stop this. And it's like, everyone's supporting you. This is great. And I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed with like how kind everyone is being. And on the internet, that's not something you get very often. I mean, I could put up a post about my dogs and I might get like a couple of hate comments, but it was just the most like special moment, probably in my career. And then, yeah, and then my agent called and said, NBC News wants to talk to you. And I was like, oh no, what? And then he called and said, they'll be at your house in an hour and a half. And I'm like, what? And then I ran around and woke everyone up and I was like, you need to clean before they get here. We cannot let them see this. So yeah, so that outpouring was, yeah, it was beyond anything I could have imagined. And it definitely also humbled me and gave me a lot of perspective. And I think I will obviously know what to expect next time, but also I'll be more careful too. You know, I don't want to put anyone in an awkward position that supports authors. And so I want to make sure, you know, next time you may think you may put something on the internet, but you never know when like 8 million people are going to see it. you just never know, I guess. So that was my story with it.
There's definitely like a power in being vulnerable though, and sharing that with your community. The bookish community is passionate. It's a good word for it. But I think that when it comes to like supporting one of our own as a reader or as an author, or as anybody involved in the industry, we're like, no, we've got you. The passion goes in both directions. And yeah, it was pretty incredible to see, because I was not expecting to see you on NBC News.
I don't think anyone was. I had to call my mom and be like, you got to watch the news. My sister's like, I can't believe I'm watching the news for this. I was like, I can't believe I gotta sit through the news to find you. And, you know, I tried, you know, with that attention, you know, I was just like, hey, let's show up for other author events. Like, if you have an author event, tell me about it. Tell me about it. And what are books coming out this week? Like, tell me what you're waiting for. So just trying to spread that love as much as I could, you know, is you know, what I could do in my capacity. Like, I just wanted to make sure like everyone knew that I was overwhelmed and I was trying to like sit back, but I was like, hey, I can't waste these eyes on literature and young adult books. Like, you know, it's a tough business, and I want to make sure that people showed up for me. I got to show up for them. I mean, that's That's how it works. So, you know, I'm making sure to, you know, spread the love as much as I can.
And you can definitely see that.
Mhm.
What a cool week.
It was a lot. Like it was what a roller coaster of emotions. I really just I went from just that came from a real dark place and ended up, I think it was 2 nights ago, I was just sitting with my husband and I look at him, I'm like, did any of that actually happen? Am I imagining all of this? Like, did that all happen? He's like, yeah. So even like people at my work were like, I'm sorry, were you on the news last night? And I was like, yeah. And then I was also a little bit like, yeah, no one came to my book signing. But they're like, well, that was great though. You know, you really kept a good attitude about it. And I'm like, yeah.
Does your work all know that you're an author?
They do know, yeah. And but I don't like I have a, you know, I use my maiden name, like this is my married name. And so I have a different name. And so they don't always kind of put the two together always. Like it's definitely kind of two different worlds. And yeah, and it just kind of collided for them that they saw me on the news. And I'm sure a lot of my former students were like, what is going on with Miss Young today? What's she gotten into now?
So let's talk about this. Because I've read your other work, and one of the things that stood out to me specifically about this book is your dedication. Your husband, sure, whatever. Jesse seems fine, but most importantly, the one that you dedicate to your grandmother. Loving memory of my grandmother. If anybody could have wrangled a town of beasts, it would have been you. And cue me crying. And I was deeply upset by this. And I messaged every single one of the Words and Whimsy moderators with, you made me cry with a dedication.
Oh.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Suzanne. Can you tell me a little bit about your grandmother and whether or not she inspired this novel?
Well, if you look in any of my other books, you'll see all of them were dedicated to her. So
Really?
all 20 published novels, every single one of
Suzanne
them is dedicated
fans,
to her.
please do not come at me for not knowing that information.
Oh no, it's okay. It's not something I even say, but yeah, every one of them is dedicated to her. And this one was extra special because in this story we have a grandmother character of Nona, and Nona was very much inspired by my grandmother. And I can assure you that my grandmother did wrangle a lot of beasts. That was my family. And she helped keep us all on track and in line. And she was like she was my world and she was everything. And so I tried to write her into any books I can. And I got really lucky in that she fits so well in the story. And then I was able to make my Nightfall Nona and have her take on a personality of her own, but of course inspired by my grandmother and her strength. You know, that could really, you know, take care of some of these monsters. Excuse me.
I was raised by my grandmother, so whenever I see a dedication like that, I'm like, oh, me too, friend, me too. And Nona's a badass.
She is.
I love her. She's not, yeah.
They're a little bit here. But Nona's a badass.
She is, and I just loved. I mean, she wasn't just there for like the comedic effect, you know. She really was a character, and I think it really helped show how the main character grew just by getting to know her. I think that just, you know, my own. I can relate very much with you being raised by your grandmother. Like that was very much my situation, and you know it was you know that was the most special relationship I had growing up. So I wanted to give that gift to another character. Like I wanted to give that gift to my character,
and it came through. And like I said, Jesse seems fine. He seems good.
He's been in another book, I think. So
can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired Nightfall?
Yeah.
But Nightfall specifically in Oregon.
Yeah. Oh, so the town of Nightfall.
Yeah.
Well, Okay, fun fact. Originally, when I had, I don't even know if it was, I'm not sure if it was announced this way, but I originally wrote it, was called The Beasts of Astoria. And it was very much set in Astoria, Oregon, because I had lived in Astoria, I lived in, I'm sorry, in Oregon for a little while and had gone up to Astoria quite a few times. And, no offense to anyone who lives there, I love it, but it is a place where there would definitely be some monsters um, who hang out on the beach. So those who know of the place may recognize, some of the spots that aren't quite those spots. Obviously, I had to add a little magic into this setting, but yeah, it was very much Astoria to start with. And then I needed to add, kind of different areas. I needed a little bit different locations. I needed to change, when the town was built. I didn't want to have to rely completely on a true town and then give them a bad reputation. Like I needed to have a fake town of Nightfall that I could make whatever their past was. I wanted to be able to create a truly monstrous past. As well as maybe move where, a really famous beach with a rock jutting out of the sand, maybe move that 20 minutes from the city, or, I wanted to be able to have that freedom and not be kind of locked into a place.
That would be awkward if, like, you're Jesse's like, why is the mayor of so and so on the phone?
Yeah.
Ask about why you
What if
said.
about it? Yeah, we would have been in big trouble then.
I said, "Don't spook Suzanne. It's been a week."
Yeah.
Really. But no,
It
I
has been
just,
weird.
I love the Northwest. And in fact, like most of my books, I think take place there. And I swear I don't set out to do that. I lived in Oregon, maybe I think a little over 6 years. And I'll tell you, I think almost like maybe 80% of my books are set there. So it's just one of the things. It's a very inspiring part of the country. So
It's
It's not I
plausible.
haven't been there, but it sounds pretty atmospheric.
yes, that's the perfect way to describe it. That's a perfect way to describe it. So unfortunately, all my books are really sad or scary. It would be nice if maybe I wrote a great love story or something. But yeah, I mean the program, Nightfall, I mean they can all take place in Oregon.
Well, you could definitely pull like a rainbow role
Yeah.
and become the author in the book. Wouldn't that be really cool? I forget what the title is that it's in the
Okay.
beginning of the book. But yeah. There you go.
Try that.
Done.
Well, and even in Nightfall, I have an author, right? I have an author character
Exactly, yeah.
that comes in, and I definitely had to like Google like titles to make sure I wasn't using any real titles. And I don't even know if I ended up just being successful in that, but it was something where I was like, okay, I need to make sure that this isn't a real book of a real author. So
Like, at this point, that's a true concern.
yeah, so I don't, like I said, I don't know if I was successful, but I tried to make it, if it wasn't, to be something that maybe has multiple books with that title, so it wouldn't just zero in on any author.
Nice. Okay. This feels like a love letter to the Lost Boys, and I will tell you, I am a huge Lost Boys fan. Here's my novel.
Yes, yes.
Have you always wanted to tell a story to pay homage to it?
I did. I was it was interesting because again I was saying most of my stories they're heavy. They deal with like societal issues. There's a lot of baggage. I'll say like they're really in depth. They're serious. I wanted to write something really fun. I wanted to write a horror. And I remember reaching out to my editor and be like, I got one for you. The Lost Boys, but they're teenage girls. And she's like, let me see more. Tell me more about this. And so as I started to write out that synopsis, I had the beats from the story. Like of course, I don't think you can watch Lost Boys and not remember the ending with the grandfather. And I wanted Nona to be like that. I wanted Nona to know about what was really going on in the town, but not saying it. So I did definitely think about that. And I love sibling relationships. I love to write them. So I wanted to have the sibling relationship. I have a sister and brother, but I ended up making it more about dealing with the parents' divorce and what that does to them emotionally and how they're dealing with it. So you still had that same element of the brothers in Lost Boys. And then of course the Frog Brothers, but instead they're the podcast boys.
Podcast.
I
I
love
loved
them.
I loved as I was reading it, I was like, and this is so and so, and this is so and so.
Yeah. So I definitely it was a very respectful homage. Like I definitely, The Lost Boys is my favorite, vampire movie. It's just it hit me at just the right time of growing up to be, just seared into my mind as this perfect classic, this time capsule. So I wanted to have those elements, but I definitely, changed up and made it its own story. Everything took a life of its own, but I was always excited when I could find like some line that I could throw in there that someone who knows Lost Boys would be like, oh,
yep.
yeah, she did that. She did not say that. Yeah. So.
I loved it. I was obsessed, and then I was reading that, and I don't know, I loved everything about it. I loved the girls, and yeah, it was just so much fun drawing those parallels, drawing those lines, and but what I loved that you added so much more history to the town, and the background that really was missing from actual Lost Boys.
Well, and that was something in a book it's hard to get away with, right? Like you realize you don't have the visual pictures to set certain tones, and we really thought about it, maybe not in the first draft, but when I went back through, it was like, I have to make Nightfall a character. Like the town itself has to be a character. Like they have to have this midnight dive, this parade. Like there has to be something about this town that you can see why people come there, and you can see why, especially if you don't know what's going on and you have these amazing townspeople that want you to like join their crew and takes you to the beach with this bonfire, and like you suddenly you went from feeling very alone to feeling so loved, and they want you to stay forever. And I just would imagine that
and they're so beautiful.
You get swept away in that, like, wow, like I could have this life, this is so cool. And it's like, well, I mean, it's not that cool, I guess.
Don't be suspicious.
Yeah, don't be suspicious. Yeah, and here's a little history of the town you should maybe know. Here's a little red flag for you.
The podcast thing was funny for me because my coworker and I at work, she's back in now they've kind of brought people back in after COVID. And so she's moved into the room that I'm in, and she likes to listen to this podcast called Morbid, which is all about, hauntings and just weird murders and stuff that are like unsolved or just really strange. So I was the whole.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to check that out immediately.
Yeah, that seems like a big thing now about just murder podcasts, and so that was perfect. I loved it.
Oh, that's so cool.
That definitely was a good update for the comic book store.
Right? Yeah, right. It was funny because when I don't even know, I can't remember when exactly I realized that they were going to be in there, but I knew because I love podcasts, and I wish I would listen to more horror. Right now I listen to a lot of like murder podcasts. And so I knew that she was listening to a podcast in like my first draft, and I think it was in the second draft that they actually came in. So I don't think they were there from the start. I definitely built them in more to like when I started to get more into the lore of the town. And now I wish I had even more of them because I have designs for more books, and I mean, who better to take you on the next adventure than the guys from Scare Me Silly? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of
well, at least one of our mods likes murder podcasts. And may even fall asleep to them, just kind of like Theo.
Oh gosh, what is it about? Yeah. Well, when you have Keith Morrison, I mean, he just.
So I have a question for both of you then. What is your favorite? Because I'm about to admit it, I've neither watched nor read Lost Boys. I know. Shame. Just
But you're a little younger.
Through the streets.
I wonder how
before your time.
Before my time, not quite. What was your favorite Easter eggs in the novel? And that's a question for you both.
let's see. Oh gosh, I had a line. I definitely, I can't remember where it was, but at one point she asked her brother or the grandmother, somebody asked the brother something, and he's like, sleep all day, party all night, or something like that. And that was like a line from the movie. And I'll tell you what, I had that line in 5 different places until I found out exactly where it had to go. But I knew from the start, I was definitely going to have that line in there. Sleep all day, party all night.
Yeah, it had to be in there. I don't know. I can't say like a favorite Easter egg, but like I had so much fun with the parallels because there was like I know what's good. I know who it is. I know it's who it's got to be, you know.
Yeah, that is one.
Anything well stuff. They're like, oh, yeah, I know.
It's like we can't say much, right? Because it's like if you know Lost Boys,
Yeah,
I think you would have it figured out.
I mean, the movie is how old now, so it's not really a spoiler, but it might be if you haven't ever seen it.
I would be interested. You know, my daughter's never seen it, and she is a huge horror fan. But I remember showing her the trailer or something similar, and she was like, "Come on!" Like, definitely did not translate.
I mean, it's what gave Rupert Sutherland his big break.
Yep.
Because you notice the rest of them didn't really go too many. A couple of them. Jason Patrick did okay.
Yeah, he did. I did read recently the one vampire who was also in Bill and Ted's, like he was saying he got a severe eye injury from the set of Lost Boys because they had to wear like those contacts, you know. So,
and I just lost his name. His character name is Marco.
So,
yeah, it was general vibes for you, Shawnee. It was the general vibes.
Yeah, because I mean, I could totally tell. I was just like, this is straight up Lost Boys, and it's awesome. But there's more to it than. I mean, but it was, you know, the so many things were flipped. You know, like the boys were girl vampires, and you know, it was just. I don't know.
They also had reasons. They also had, you know.
Yeah.
They had more backstory too, or at least Minnow had more backstory too than you ever got from Kiefer Sutherland.
Well, and not okay. And even though I was drawing parallels, it's like their stories didn't necessarily end the same way. Some of them, so it's not. I mean, it's not a one for one, but it was just. I just enjoyed it, and I liked the fill in of the backstory of the town and the surprises that came after that.
Awesome.
One of the things that first happens is that you're introduced obviously to their grandmother, Nona. And you find out that Nona is acting like pretty sus in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm wondering what research you did as you were writing for Nona for her protections and superstitions and dolls and things like that. Where did you come up with that?
Yeah, that's great. So I'll say like her attitude, just even in the way, like, I think, and sometimes it's hard to remember what I kept in the, you know, you write so many drafts. I'm like, which published? But I remember she had like one line when they showed up and, you know, Theo is kind of a mess and the grandmother's like, is this how you always dress? And Theo's like, well, the boys seem to like it. And like, they kind of smile at each other. So definitely the sass came from, you know, my own grandmother. As far as the protection spells, like I definitely had to start digging into the lore. Like, okay, what can hurt vampires? You know, what are the different stories that have used this? How did they use it? And trying to think of things in a different way than that's been used in the past. I mean, garlic has a totally different kind of vibe here, and
that was one of my favorite. I guess you could call that one an Easter egg.
Ew.
No, I thought it was funny. That parallel was funny.
So yeah, just trying to like think through. Yeah, I cracked up so hard at that one. Trying to think through, like, oh, you know, and I definitely with the town's past, you know, that was something I had to just create all on my own as far as like, okay, like what could get the town to this place, and you know, getting into the background of, you know, the main vampire, the main, you know, villain, and making that, even though, you know, they could be horrible now, maybe it wasn't always that way, and giving reasons for these things. So yeah, I definitely just had to research, what in literature, what are some of the acceptable ways to hurt vampires. Because it's funny, because it's not scientific. I mean, we don't have actual answers. So, I mean, I can just make something up entirely. But what's funny is we've relied on these same, cures and weapons for so long that if I just said like, oh yeah, like when, vampires touch, light bulbs, they explode. I mean, everyone would be like, what? That's not real. And it's like, neither's any of the other stuff. But so I just kind of researched, just the vampire lore and what I could use and what would work. So I didn't want to be too close to. I wanted to have its own thing, and that's why I had the midnight dive and how they use that midnight dive to.
That was interesting. I liked that twist.
Yeah, so I wanted to have something interesting like that.
I did when she. I'll try to do this without spoilers.
I know, right? It's so hard.
He was like, well, but how? And they're like, I mean, and okay, this isn't a spoiler because this is how you deal with vampires, and it has been forever. You stake them and cut their head off. And she's like, okay, but what else can we do? And they're like, you stake them and cut their head off. She's like, but there's got to be something. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Stake them and cut their head off. It's like,
I did love the cool logic of the podcast boys of like Elijah and like his cool logic in the face of her panic. Like she like, we have to do something, and he said like, you have to stake him and cut their head off, and it was just like such a simple answer. And she was just like, no, that can't be it. Like I don't plan to kill anybody. Like I don't want to kill anyone.
Yeah.
So I think one of my other like favorite lines is she said something about like, are they mermaids or are they sirens? And he was like, sirens aren't real. And it's like, okay, but all these other monsters are real. But
vampires are fine. Okay. Yeah. That was good too. Yeah, obvious. Of course, that's not real. That's just silly.
Yeah.
It's now headcanon for me that vampires die when they touch light bulbs.
Right? I should have done that. Like I should have done.
They just explode. No.
The most obscure random thing that has not ever been canon for this particular mythological creature.
I'm going to put that in another book, and I'm going to say that. And you'll know that it was from this.
Yes.
This for Jordan.
I remember when we came up with that.
This vampire touched the light bulb and exploded.
They sparkle, so why not?
Yeah. Right? You can do whatever you want.
Nothing's real. I'm loving this. Now let's flip it back around because I want to know about whether or not you're going to be writing more vampires.
Okay. So this is just a thought. Like this is nothing. This is me like totally just telling you like all the secrets here.
Okay.
So, obviously we didn't know how this will be received because I'll be honest, like I love my readers. And when I tell them, hey, I got a new book, they're like, is it the program? It's like, no, this one's monsters. And I'm like, okay, cool. Then I'm like, I got a new book. They're like, is it the program? No, not this time. So, maybe someday, but okay. So imagine this, right? In Nightfall, I want to have a second book called In Darling. And in Darling, Texas, the girls can cast quite a spell. And I can imagine having, a second book and we're dealing with a coven, and then a third book and we're dealing with something else, and then something else. And then finally, return to Nightfall, because maybe sirens are real. Wouldn't that be something? So that's just my whole, like, my fantasy plan. If that will happen, I'm not sure. So right now, no, there is no other book, but I totally have designs on writing at least a second book, and having the podcast boys come to her and be like, we need your help. Yeah. And her and Marco and her new boyfriend, they all go to Texas to fight a bunch of witches. What do you think? Do you think that's...
I mean, the boys would have a lot to work with because, I mean, you could bring all kinds of cryptids and stuff in, everything.
Right. And you just have the opportunity to have so many So many fake towns, so many monsters, so many
Mhm.
possibilities. Like, I'm
Oh my
about
goodness. So
Yeah, you gotta get
I'm pre-ordering now.
it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, fingers crossed that they agree.
Um, I'm just thinking about your program fans. Like every time you announce a new book,
Love it.
they're just like, "Is it the program yet?"
Always nice. I love them so much. And, you know, that's one very cool thing that's happening is the program series is getting relaunched and we have all new covers. I even, um,
Tell us about the covers. Have they been released yet?
no,
You can show us, it's fine.
I know I will. I'm like, do I have anything here? No, I don't. I actually, I've only seen the first cover, and we had gone. I'll tell you, the program came out literally 10 years ago, so it's a 10-year anniversary edition, and we have been talking about redoing these covers probably since the treatment, because really we love the first cover, and then the rest of the covers never captured that same essence of the program with the yellow scrubs. But we just never could figure it out, and we tried all these different things and never could figure it out. So when they came to me and so we're redesigning it, I'm like, good luck. And I sent a bunch of pictures. Well, they found this designer, and they sent me it, and I was like, oh, I want a poster of that on my wall. Like, that is so very cool, so very different. I mean, you couldn't
Yeah.
get more different, and yet it somehow works. So I will share it with you afterwards because it's on my
Awesome.
computer, and I'll have to like secret send it to you.
Well,
Uh,
you're right though. I mean, the program cover is iconic. Like if it's just your name, and I found an image online to let folks know to come to the chat tonight, and it was just your character's legs on the cover. You know what book cover that is.
It's true. Those yellow scrubs, and there's no yellow scrubs. I mean, it is completely different, and yet I love it, and I cannot wait to see the whole series and what they're going to do. It's just going with a different. It's just going in a different direction entirely, and I love it. And I think I went through just to kind of because the book is 10 years old, so there's a couple of references I have to go in there and update, and a couple of language changes. And I reread it for the first time, no joke, since I published it, because I don't reread my books because it makes me feel panicky. And I reread it and I was like, well, dang, Sloan and James, like I forgot about you two. Like, what a love story. Wow. I definitely, need to do that again. So I can see why the fans, the readers have stuck with the series and are like, so what about Sloan and James? And it's funny because in my head, I'm like, well, aren't they like 28 now? Because it's been so long since I wrote it. But no, I've been pitching a book 7 to my publisher for years. So you never know, right? Like, hey, you just never know when these things happen. So
But you've been really lucky with your book covers in general because I remember the year that Girls with Sharp Sticks came out and it was iconic and it is still one of the nicest books on my shelf because it's not that typical fantasy or sci-fi cover.
Hmm.
yeah, it really stood out. And a fun fact with that one, I really wanted on her because everything's right, it's so sterile, and then she has her face coming off.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted just a drop of blood, like a droplet of blood on her shirt sleeve. And they tried it and they were like, no, no. And I still think that droplet of blood would have been very cool. But they thought it made it look like a horror, which I'm like, well, I mean, it
It kind of is.
kind of goes there. But no, I loved that cover so much. I thought it was so cool, and it was so easy to recreate, and it's a great book face. So when libraries do like book face
Mhm.
posts, like it's so easy to put that one there. Yeah, so like the program, I also loved Hotel Ruby, the original Hotel Ruby with the elevator. I loved that cover, and All in Pieces, which no one even knows about, but it's my little contemporary book, and I
I
loved,
do.
loved, loved that cover.
I remember that one. Yeah, you've got really lucky with the covers.
Yeah.
And I agree. There should have been a droplet of blood on there.
Right, like, that would have really just knocked it out. But, we'll see. It's like, you just never know, like, I've been publishing my first book came out in 2010, right? So it's like, things have changed so much, and, like, things are just always moving and changing, and I certainly didn't think when I, sold the program back then that it would really be more than I had 2 failed series before the program came out. So I had a series, they canceled the 3rd book. I had a series, they didn't even put it on paperback, and I thought, that was it. and they rejected the program. And then we sent it to one other editor. I was like, I'm just gonna send it to this one editor because she's liked my other books. And she was like, yeah, like I want to publish the program. And it was just supposed to be one book. Like there was definitely no plan to make it a series or anything like that. And it's just one of those things that kind of took on life of its own. So yeah, it's kind of like last week when I thought like, hey, this is the end. My career's over. Like no one cares about my books anymore. This, that, feeling sorry for myself, honestly. And, and then it turned out everyone's like, no, we're still here. We support you. And we've been through this and you're not alone. And now I'm like, okay, let's write books and buy other authors' books and go see some poor stand-up comics.
Well, and I love it that
stand-ups.
I love it that even, I mean, Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett, Stephen King, some of the big names. I mean, that I'd seen some of those posts before that your supporters were sharing. That was like, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's more of a rite of passage.
Yeah. And I wish I had that perspective when I posted that. I wasn't even understand. Yeah. And I really wasn't thinking, like, I really wasn't thinking about anything. When I posted it, like I said, I didn't even say, what my book was or, that it was a signing, and I just posted it. And now I will have to always, live with that. But I will say I do love the people that would like Photoshop people in the chairs for me.
Oh,
I love that.
Yeah. Oh.
Those have been my favorite posts.
Very cool. I think I liked it because now you probably have a lot of followers who are aspiring writers. And for them to see somebody who has been really successful also struggle, that is so helpful for people who are trying to break into the industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it humanizes you in a way where somebody can go, oh, I've been there too. You know what I mean? It's that great C.S. Lewis quote, "What, you too? I thought I was the only one."
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually have gotten a lot of, either writers who are just starting out or those who want to, who plan to publish, who have reached out and said very similar, like, I'm glad I saw this now so that I'll know what to expect and if it happened to you. But I also remember, I've been a teacher for 18, 19 years now. And I remember I was teaching a creative writing class, and my students would typically forget I was an author unless I had a book come out. And then it's like, oh, wait, look, Miss Young's, having a book sign. But I had one student who came up to me and he's like, I never thought I could be a writer. But then, like, I found out, like, you could do it, so anybody could. And I'm like, I know you mean that, like, in the best way possible. And yes, it's true. Like, let's all write today in creative writing class. But no, I think that's really important too. Like, we are just, like, all of us are just people, and we have our like down moments and our low moments. And I think I wish I knew starting out writing that this would be such a roller coaster. I know a lot of people think like you publish your first book, like, okay, let's go, we're on the road now. The thing is, like I said, I've had 2 series fail. I've had other books fail. I mean, it's hard, and you're always wondering, like, will I ever sell another book? Will I ever have another idea? Will I ever finish the book that I'm working on? Like, you definitely have these ups and downs and a lot of disappointments. And it's like, sometimes the wins though are so great. Nothing makes me happier than when I'm on like my Facebook group, my Facebook readers, because we do just talk about the program, and I just love how much they know about, and I can really dig into it and like talk, and like that to me is the high of it all. Like that's the high point, is being able to just have those connections with readers, and being able to, when I do go to events and I have, they're not my students, but students crying, like, this book found me exactly when I needed it. Like the program found me exactly then. And then I love also being surprised, the books that I think everyone forgot about, like say All in Pieces or Hotel Ruby, Hotel for the Lost, is always a surprise for me, because I will occasionally just get these letters that this was my favorite book of yours. And I'm like, really, no one ever says that. Like, it's so fun to get those once in a while. So you just, I think, what I'm always trying to remind myself is like, take the wins when you get them. Like, take the wins, because it's not all winning. It's a lot of losing. And, just take those little moments and find that joy there.
Well, I think it is important, like we said, for aspiring writers to know that those are coming and that that's normal for what you're doing. And it doesn't matter how good you are, it's going to happen, and hopefully that gives them a little strength to get through those hard moments of, oh, okay, nobody cares. I mean, people do, it isn't that. It was bad timing. It was maybe not enough advertising in the right place. Who knows, But of course it feels devastating, because here you are all excited with your new book, baby.
Yeah.
So, but to see that, we'll go, all right, yeah, it's not always going to be. And how many authors that we don't realize still have day jobs on top of writing and maybe established,
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think another thing that I learned, and honestly, I got this from a lot of the comments, is, I need to be, as far as these book events, I need to be more understanding of people not being able to come to events or not wanting to come to events. And I thought people had a lot of really great points. Like, hey, I still want to get signed copies of this book, but I don't want to go to book events right now, or I'm unable to go to book events right now. Like, how can we make it so that we can combine, either have, hybrid event that's partially online and in person, or maybe doing two, like maybe, you have your signing, or before that you have a live Q&A, but partnering with a bookshop so that they can get signed copies from that same signing. And I wish I would have thought of that, because it's just smart, and it's kind, and it gives everyone the chance to have that experience and get to talk to the authors and ask them the questions they want. So that's something I will make sure to do from now on, is I will make sure that these events are more accessible, and that I let them have a chance to, chat and ask the questions, and ask, why Realm is so horrible, or whatever it is they're going to ask about the program. And also get the chance to get that signed copy too. I think that's important. It's, it's that interaction, but it's not just limited to your home store anymore, and it shouldn't be, in my opinion.
No, you're right. The book, the book community is built upon community.
Yeah. And not all of us, and this other thing too, like a lot of us authors, when it comes to an author tour, I know it seems like, oh, author tour, taking first class tickets and this. Yeah, no, we usually fund our own trips. And those of us that work day jobs, we can't go tour. And so, for me, like, I can't go tour. I work, I have kids, I have 3 dogs. I have a lot going on. And a book tour is just not something that, number one, I could afford or have the time to do. And so, I think that's where, there's this great opportunity for those of us that do have that day job and do have those financial limitations to be able to, still reach our readers everywhere. Yeah, I wish I had more opportunities for my international readers too, because it is really hard to get them signed books. And, I don't know who to partner with for that either. So yeah, there's all of these great ways to be more adaptable to the world we live in now. But those pieces aren't all there yet. So it's a great opportunity for someone to swoop in and get them.
We're all learning, definitely post-pandemic as well. Chris says, I already ordered mine from Changing Hands.
Awesome. So with Changing Hands, yeah, all of the orders that come in, they basically call me, and I run over there because it's not far from my house, and I sign them. And so, yeah, that's really exciting. And I mean, I hope they like it.
Will you draw inside the book for them?
Ooh, I can try. I am a terrible artist. I will say one thing I wish that we would have thought of with the design of the inner covers. I absolutely love this, but let me tell you, it's actually kind of hard to sign because there's only a little bit there and a little bit there. And but yeah, I will get a silver Sharpie and I'll put a little something in there. I mean, I always write hearts. That's just part of my signature. So
You need to do Nona stick figures.
oh my goodness. Yes.
Maybe that one.
I should order some. See, I'm terrible at any kind of like design. Like I need a friend who's like really good at like graphic design because I wanted stickers so badly for the series, just the stickers with the 3 girls. And then I wanted a Nona sticker and I was going to have it on my phone. But could you imagine like a Nona sticker? That would be so great. So
I would love a Nona sticker. I think that the YA needs more elderly characters in general.
Well,
and I think elderly characters.
And I think especially, you know, with grandparents and grandmothers, and I mean, for a lot of people, there's such a foundation to their lives, and unfortunately, they're gone way too soon. So, and it's such a big thing in your life. You know, that's typically one of the first people you lose, and it's such a important moment that I think we don't see enough of them for how big of a part of our lives they are. We don't see enough Nonas. Sorry. I will say, so this book also came out this month. What Stays Buried is my debut middle grade.
Ooh.
And it also has a grandmother in it. So
I
also have the grandmother character in this book too.
Gimme.
Yeah. I love that book. This is my sweet, yeah. I mean, it's not sweet. It's actually really sad and scary, but but I very much love it.
Why do middle grade books rip my heart out?
They do.
Every emotional one. Because I read it from the perspective of a parent now, and I'm left like emotionally destroyed.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It was interesting because you know, when my editor read it, like this is definitely a tearjerker of a ghost story. But my editor was like, why is this the scariest book that I've read this year? This is a middle grade. So yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, it's spooky, but hopefully people check it out. It's a fun one.
I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, let me know.
A lot of people are saying that they're going to check it out because middle grade does not play.
Yeah,
it's there to destroy you.
I wish when I was that age,
fluffy in comparison. I swear.
There just wasn't much when I was that age. It's amazing now how many wonderful books there are, and I love it.
I remember telling one of my dear friends about this middle grade book as I had finished it, and I was telling her, and we were in a pool, and we were like our hands were clasped together, and I was like, and then she's at the kitchen table, and she's like, no, and I'm like, and she says, and we were like sobbing together, and yeah, and that's the book that I published. So that's what you'll get when you read What Stays Buried.
Were you both in like cool floaties?
What's that?
Were you both in like cool floaties?
We were just standing in the pool because we're in Arizona and it was the summertime, and we were like standing like against the ledge, like with our hands clasped together as I like walked her through the plot and got to the end, and she's like, no, please, oh no. And yeah, and then we were like, yes. And she's like, you have to write that. It's so special. And so I actually thanked her in the acknowledgments and said, you were right, it was special. So it was just a really touching end.
Oh my goodness.
That writer's weird, right? Like I can go and tell my friends, like, so I have this idea, and then tell them this story and make them cry, and they're like, yes, write about that. So yeah, that's
we're two very different people, because whenever I say I have an idea, some of the moderators are like, Jordan, no.
It's like, yeah.
Suzanne, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm very excited to see the new program covers after our live. Sorry, folks, you'll have to wait a little while. But thank you for joining us. Thank you to the Nest for being here, whether or not you're watching now or rewatching this chat. We'd love to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our next author chat is happening on Friday, April 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we will be chatting with Lauren Taman, who is the author of I'll Stop the World, with Libby Cowling's new imprint. So we are very excited to be talking to Lauren next week, and we will see you all later.